What is the first thing you look at when you open a deck?
First thing I look for is right on the cover slide, and it gives me a little bit of preview. If the cover slide, you can tell how professional or what you're going to be expecting through the rest of the deck just based on how the cover slide is laid out, especially that first tagline, that little line below the logo. Does it say something hyperbolic? Is it full of fluff and buzz? Or does it say something very straightforward, almost like a one-line elevator pitch? It's the pitch before the pitch. That is the very first thing that I look for. And depending on how that goes, that experience, that puts me in a certain frame of mind and does shadow the rest of the deck for me. I'm just being very straightforward because it's the first impression. Just like when you shake somebody's hand, the sensation that you had, how it feels shaking somebody's hand, tells you about potentially what the rest of the interaction. Now, you might be surprised, but most of the time, not really. So that's the very first thing. And then I'm open, and usually what I'm looking for is a standard first slide after the cover. I'm looking for a standard problem slide normally. And that's the Sequoia method that they made really powerful and popular. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I've seen other pitch decks give me something like a purpose or an executive summary if they've got lots of traction or news to share. But typically that's what I'm looking for first. But I'll usually be open for the next slide to be something else. But typically, if they start off with a problem slide, you can't go wrong.
What makes you close it immediately, the pitch decks?
If I don't, let's go back to the first experience. So I normally won't close a pitch deck on the first slide, but I'll get very close. It'll get me to maybe 80% I'm ready to close the deck, and I'll just wait for the next slide to confirm. And the very first slide or the very first thing that completely kills my attention is if it's not clear. I have no idea. The problem is complex. It's a paragraph, and I have no idea, or it's got so many bullet points. If I don't understand, then I'll be pretty much 95, 99% ready to close the deck. And I may, out of curiosity, if it's really bad, I might look at the next slide just to see how bad it is. But that's pretty much where I know. Like, I can pretty much tell if I'm going to look at the rest of the pitch deck. If I'm thinking from an investor perspective, in the first 30 seconds, I'll know.
Talk about the problem slide. What works now? How detailed should founders get into the problem?
You should get detailed enough to make the investor want to go through the rest of the deck. You don't have to put everything in your problem slide, and it should be detailed enough, but at the same time, the key is to be concise. And I've talked with founders, I've talked with investors, and probably Y Combinator says this the most is that if you can make it concise, that really does exemplify the type of founder that is confident, that I don't have to, if you go to a meeting or if you're going to a networking event and someone just shakes their hand, like back in the day, I used to have this introduction instead of, oh, this is what I do, this is my background, this is my degree, and this is my company. And you give someone like a complete, 5-minute elevator pitch right when you meet them. I used to shake people's hands and I used to say, hi, my name is Ed. I monetize vision. That's it. Just straightforward. And then everybody would be a little stunned and they would say, you do what? Can you just explain? And then I'd have the next part of the elevator pitch and I'd slowly draw them into the conversation. And it's the same thing as the problem slide on a pitch deck. The more concise that you can get it, then the better it's going to be. But as long as you can present something that this is a preview and this is very clearly the problem that I'm solving and it's concise, while at the same time, you can have something that I say it needs to be compelling. And if it's a little contrarian in there that I'm looking at something other people aren't looking at, and you're giving a little preview. You don't have to explain it all right up front, but if you can explain that I'm going to take you on a journey that you maybe didn't expect, then those are how you stack more power into that problem slide to get others interested.
Before going to the market slide, there should be a market size numbers at the problem slide. When do they matter here?
The market size and the market that you're talking about to show how big the problem is are two different things, although they come from the same tree. So when you have a problem slide, if you can tell me that, teenagers have this problem, or if you told me 40 million teenagers have this problem, there's a big difference. Now I know you're a thoughtful founder, and now I've got my mind in, wow, this is a big problem. 40 million immediately. And if you've seen enough pitch decks, immediately I go into 40 million, and I think 10% of that is 4 million, right? And I just automatically start dividing the pie to give me a preview of what market I should expect. Whereas when you go to the market slide, it's if those 40 million paid us $10 each, that's 400 million. And that's the difference is you start getting into a little more of the dynamics and you start explaining the economics, the math of the market. But in the problem slide, just give me the big number, tell me how big this problem is, and get me excited that you're solving a problem for a big group of people.
Biggest mistakes you see on the problem slide?
Again, biggest mistakes. So I would say one of the first mistakes is it's just too much information, and I'm never going to remember it. So you have to understand, if I'm looking at pitches like you've looked at many pitch decks, and I don't know about you, but I would never sit down and say, I'm going to spend 2 hours looking at pitch decks. I didn't have time for that. I would say I'm going to squeeze in pitch decks here and there, or if I saw an email and had a compelling email subject line, I read it, I'd look at the pitch deck right away. Typically, I'm squeezing them in. I'm looking at them while I'm traveling or while I'm eating lunch because it's just nonstop. And sometimes you have more than others at different times. And so I only have a certain amount of cognitive capacity. And the harder you make it on me and I have to work and think about it, I'm just going to pass because somebody else, there's another pitch deck that could just be 10 times better than yours right away. So it's like dating. People don't like to settle down or they don't put a lot more effort because they think, okay, if this date is bad, I'm just going to swipe right or left or whatever it is and go on another date with a new person. And so much choice changes your behavior. And so same thing with pitch decks. A lot of founders think, I'm the only one sending Ed this pitch deck and I'm the only one solving this problem. When I can tell you, listen, I tell them all the time, I can throw a rock and hit 12 other founders trying to solve the same problem. So right away, if you're making me work to look at the pitch deck because it's unclear, it's just way too complicated, then that's going to be the issue. The other thing is, very common mistake, is that founders pitch the customer. So they make it like, you can now save $10 million, type thing. And they make me the customer and they're talking to me and they're using all this marketing jargon and hype. And that just takes me out of the pitch deck. I'm not even thinking about an investment at this moment in time. Now, what am I thinking is, do I have this problem? Do I want better banking? Do I want different construction material in my home? Do I want to save the environment? Do I want these things? And immediately, I'm not in the pitch deck as an investor. And so now you've lost me and it's going to take me a lot of different energy to get back there. So I would say just not being clear, concise, and just having confusing language, and then not talking to the investor. And in general, just not presenting, and this goes to the startup itself, just not presenting a compelling enough problem as it is. You may think is a big problem. At the same time, the problem is something that I know you're not going to be able to solve. If you tell me banking is broken, personal finance is broken, and that's your problem statement, I'm going to go, okay, that's your opinion, but that doesn't give me anything to believe that you can actually solve the problem, anything like that. Now you're just being hyperbolic again. And I hate to say it, but it shows you as a lazy founder that you haven't been thoughtful about it to actually pitch me something in a meaningful way. I would say I could wrap all the mistakes up that way.
I think some of the founders also sell the problem to their self firstly.
All the time. And I don't mind that if you throw that in. And this is a really great, I love the fact that you brought that up, Brock, because most founders start off scratching their own itch that they've got a problem, but they haven't gone beyond and validated that other people have that problem or it's a big enough problem. I don't mind if you then, after the problem, you say, I found out, or you say 40 million people or $4 billion goes into this problem. Then you say, and here's how I started with my own problem and look at my journey. Then I'm okay with that as long as you set me up properly and know that this is a startup worth investment. And I think that's a mindset that founders don't understand is, you have a certain amount of dry powder. If you're a general partner, you're experiencing this, and your limited partners come in and you have a certain investment thesis. And if you look at what you're investing and the failure rate of startups, I need to see one founder 50x, 100x my money because all 90% of my bets are going to fail. So that means you have to become a unicorn and get to $100 million in revenue in what, 5, 7, maybe 10 years type thing, that people are expecting very fast returns, especially with AI and just how quickly things snowball these days. And so if you are not ready to do that or play that game or get in the ring at that level, then automatically you're not going to fit my investment thesis, my investment parameters. What I need to do for my livelihood, because I've had investors and some of them are institutional and they expect huge returns. And some have been just, okay, I'm personal, I'm an angel. If you can 2x my money, then I'll be really happy. And so now I can change the way that I look at different types of ventures. And a lot of founders don't understand that when they're approaching an investor.
The solution slide. It feels that everyone is trying to be the AI of X today, as you mentioned these days. How should founders explain their solution?
The solution should align to the problem exactly. And I say this all the time. If your problem, and you're making it clear, and you say 10 million people waste $4 billion because this is slow, manual, and expensive, then all you have to say is that we've created an AI that does it faster, automatically, and is 10% of the cost. That's all you have to do. You just have to clearly state, because if you do this right, the investor gets excited that you're going to solve a problem or starts to telegraph a little bit, start to predict, I think I know where you might be going with this, or I'm excited. But if you don't actually solve that problem, if you start going off, and this is where I see a common mistake with the solution statement is, I automatically know if you are a founder that created a solution and now you are looking for a problem. You just found some other problem. You thought this is a really great technology, and it might be, but then let's see what problems it solves. And there's a disconnect between the two. Then I automatically know. And many founders don't realize this, but I can immediately tell, a lot of the times, whether you're on that journey or not. And then I start to get weary of that. So if the two aren't connected, and at this moment in time, I don't mind if you just tell me it's AI driven. You can AI wash your solution statement all day long. You can say, we've developed an AI, or we use AI to solve this problem. That's fine. I'm going to get into the rest. But if you don't actually solve the problem in a way that I understand and I think is feasible or is contrarian, if you're saying we're the Uber for this, I'm going to say, yeah, you and everybody else. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. How many derivatives that I saw of Airbnb? We're the Airbnb for this. We're the Uber for that. We deliver this. We deliver that. And automatically, if it's not unique and gives me a unique insight and makes me say, okay, I didn't think about it this way, then probably you're not going to go past this. I'm going to maybe scan your deck for some type of differentiation, but by now I'm pretty much 90% checked out.
This is a common problem. They see the solutions such as blockchain. There's a blockchain solution, and let's fit it a problem. Let's
Yes.
fit it the agriculture. Agriculture for blockchain.
Yes. And at the same time, if you can somehow explain to me in those two sides, problem, solution, that blockchain could possibly work, great. then I'm interested. If you just say, we figured out a way to apply blockchain to this problem, or if the problem is everyone's tried blockchain, everyone's tried generative AI. I've got a founder I work close with. I'm super bullish on his product. And I tell him, listen, stop pitching the way that you're doing. Pitch against the market. Tell investors billions of dollars are going to generative AI in this way, this vertical. What has it done? Nobody has delivered on the promises. So we actually set ourselves contrarian against that. And now we're solving a gap in the market in a way that these big AI companies can't. And I said, that is a compelling thing. And you can do this all day long because you will find that investor that said, great, I'm not in AI. My money isn't going to go that far, but if I can bet against AI, it's the whole Michael Burry, the Big Short, when everyone's going to say it's going to go bullish, I'm going to short the market. That's where the money is made. And so you will find investors that'll say, that's very fascinating because if we can carve that out, if AI fails in this area, then we're going to be the king. Or if we get all the customers and AI eventually gets there, they're going to want to buy us. That's how investors think. How are you going to make me money? So I don't mind if you AI wash, blockchain wash, if you just do these things, but then now you better tell me that it's possible, how it's different, and you better get me a novel insight where I'm excited to hear what you have to say next.
They use also technical jargon. What do you
Yes.
prefer, technical or simple language? And what makes you believe in a solution?
So technical jargon is really hit or miss in the sense that I was a very bullish crypto investor. 80% of my portfolio was in crypto a few years ago. And I'm still sitting on that investment in different ways, waiting for it to deliver on its promises. But if you came to me back then with a blockchain with jargon around crypto, I would have understood it and you would have got my attention. But if I didn't know anything about crypto, or maybe I was interested and I didn't have experience that I did with crypto, because we did a lot of due diligence on crypto, a ton of due diligence. So I knew. But if I hadn't and I was just first starting off, then you would have lost me. So I tell founders, don't take that chance. Let's bring your language down to the lowest common denominator and say, all right, now we're going to speak to everybody in a way that it's approachable for everybody. So at least I can then go to my crypto buddy, my crypto advisor, and I can say, hey, I got this. It sounds really compelling. Is this a thing? Does this actually happen? And I will do that a lot. A lot of founders think that I'm making the decision by myself. I never get to make the decision by myself. I've written very few checks just by myself. But if I can't explain to my wife, then it's not going to happen in terms of personal check. But I will go to another advisor and I will say, you're an expert in this field. Is this a thing? Tell me what you think. Tell me, would you invest in this? And I'll get their feedback. So technical jargon, it can work if you're talking to the right investor, but why take that chance? That's, the first thing that I say. So that's how you start to bring that language to a common level for everybody. And then what was your second part of the question? Just want to make sure.
What makes you believe in the solution?
What makes me believe in the solution? I have to believe the solution, but I don't have to believe in the founders for the solution. And there's a big difference. If you came to me and you said, have created a new sentient alien technology that solves this problem, but if it's set up really nicely, I will be interested. I will say, okay, alien sentient technology, everything looks professional up to this point in time. It makes sense. Now I'm going to keep going. So it depends on where I am. Now, by the end of the deck, I may not believe whatsoever. I may not believe in the solution, or even if it's a remote possibility. But right at the problem solution, if you give me a moonshot, crazy, contrarian solution, and I go, I didn't think that was possible, but maybe I'll actually get a little excited with that. So I don't have to believe the solution is possible. I don't have to necessarily believe in the founders to create the solution. I just have to be interested enough to take the next step at the solution stage.
How many average minutes do you spend on a deck?
Yes. So I break it down in chunks, and I think this is important. because if I gave the answer, I spent 3 minutes, people think I have 3 minutes. You literally have 5 seconds, 30 seconds, 90 seconds, and then 3 minutes. All right. And then maybe I'll spend 10 minutes. So I'm going to give you my time based on have you earned it in the deck. So in the first 5 seconds, I'll look at your cover slide. Then in the first 30 seconds, I'll scan cover, problem, solution, probably market slide, and then you might be done. So that's all you get. That's all you get, 30 seconds. And then I'll go 90 seconds through the deck. And if I think to myself, oh, this is worth it, or something draws me in, I'll say, okay, I got an extra 3 minutes. So I'll spend 3 minutes. And then usually by that time, it's passed off to a pile where then I'll spend another 10, 15 minutes and I'll come back to it. It's always in segments. And so founders should think, I got 5 seconds first. That's it. And then I have 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 3 minutes, and then maybe 10, 15 minutes.
The first 3 or 5 slides is very crucial on that regard, because it is the slides and decks means to get a meeting, not getting the investment.
Yes.
And the first 3 slides or 5 slides is to also hook the investor to read the rest.
Absolutely. And we teach this at startups.com all the time. We say, you're not looking for an investment in your first screener/introductory deck. You're not looking for investment. And a lot of founders think, I need to get the investment. And even in your introduction email, they put their whole pitch deck in verbal form right on the email. So it takes 10 minutes to read the email. That's wrong. You are just looking for the investor to make a sorting decision. Does it go in the no pile or the maybe pile? There is no yes pile at this moment in time. None whatsoever. It is impossible. So it's either the no pile or the maybe, let's look at it later pile. That's all you want. If you can get into the maybe, let's look more later pile, then you've won for your first pitch deck.
Let's talk metrics. What numbers actually matter all the time for the pre-revenue companies? What should they show? And revenue companies, what growth rates impress you?
Sure. So if you're pre-revenue, the most important metric are your market numbers. It is market size, how many users you're affecting. And then depending on the investment thesis of the company, for example, we've got some angel checks that we want to write. The most important number that I want to know is one, right? Just one. Does one customer love your product? How do you know? And we're very early stage, pre-seed. So that to me is an important number. So every investor and every fund has a different thesis. So some say, if I'm going to write a pre-seed check right now, and this is the trend that I saw a really interesting stat, and kind of scary, it raises the bar, but about half of pre-seed investors now will not invest unless there's revenue. And that's completely changed from, back in 2020, 2021. It was all, can you build it? Have you built something? Great. We're interested pre-seed. But now it's, you have to have generated revenue. So the numbers start to shift. So if you're pre-revenue, you just have to show that you've de-risked the investment some way or another. So if you tell me we have a waiting list, or we have 1,000 people growing 10% week over week in terms of people putting down their deposit, or, we've been growing in terms of our follower account on social media. That way, I'm looking at investment right now, and we've been experimenting with it. Follower account, we looked at the metrics in the market, and we say, take the whole follower account and times that by 3%. 3% of that follower account will pay money for a product later on. So now I have a certain target that I need that initial pre-revenue traction to look like. And that's, again, founders need to understand, all of us investors, we do our math. We do our spreadsheets. We have our rubrics. These are what they're called rubrics, where we plug it in and we say, are we actually going to make a return on our money? Even if you're pre-revenue, I have to start to think about that. What's it going to take to actually make money and protect my investment? So pre-revenue, really it's open, but you have to show meaningful traction in something that de-risks the investment for the investor. And ideally that's revenue. Now, if you are generating revenue after revenue, a lot of founders think that the total amount of revenue is important. And yes, psychologically, I do this all the time. If I'm helping a founder raise and I'm reading and I'm editing their introductory email, so I do this literally every day. I will edit, 10 decks and 10 introductory emails. And if I see that they've already generated $1 million, I will move that up to the top. Or I'll put that right in the subject lines, this solution already with $1 million, right? And that's an impressive number. That's psychologically, that's going to get attention. But more important than that is the week over week or the month over month growth. I don't care how much, as long as you've sustained that growth. So if you've done, and this is what I learned from Y Combinator, it's not me. Y Combinator taught me this. When I initially applied to Y Combinator and I was learning from them, and before I got the interview down there, they said, put a sticky note on your computer. I can't remember who said this, and write 10% and grow your revenue or your users or whatever metric it is, 10% week over week. And if you can do that, sustain that for 3 months, 90 days, then you're good. And that's sort of really stuck with me because I've done so many experiments now where I've been able to get 10% week over week growth for maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then I've tapped out that source. And so if you can get revenue and you can show that it's growing 10% week over week, even if you start off at $1,000, the next week it's $1,100, things like that, then you're good. I don't care. You don't need to have made $1 million because we can do the math. I can say, okay, use some money, we put into these activities and you execute properly and you stay on this trajectory. Well, then that is a hockey stick growth graph. It goes exponentially based upon 10% week over week.
What metrics do investors ignore?
Vanity metrics. So metrics that just don't make sense. They don't actually apply to de-risking the startup. That's it, right? If the metrics, and I've had this conversation, argument, and the founder got really upset with me, and it was an e-commerce. It was an e-commerce startup, and she said, people love my stuff. I've got so much traction. I said, great. What is the traction? She said, I've got visitors to my website. People come to my website and they tell me they love the product. So you got two metrics. One, total visitors to the website. And two, anecdotal, you've got qualitative metrics that you say are worth it. And I said, great, but you're an e-commerce company. So how many people actually bought anything? And she didn't show any sales. And she was incredulous. She was offended that I was even asking that question and trying to explain to me. And I said, it's a pass. It's not going to happen. No investor is going to look at this until you can actually show that someone's interested in buying. So if the metrics don't match the validation of the customer, the problem, don't de-risk the investment, then they're completely ignored.
Some of the companies don't have revenue because of their industry. So how should they show their metrics?
Yes. So again, find out what's meaningful. If you are, let's say, in deep tech, right? Or I had a founder, great example. I had a founder that could not deliver his solution, generate revenue until he had a very large pool of money. He needed all the money to come in because it was a fintech managing money, new B2B payment solution. His traction were the logos that said, we're in, we'll sign a letter, and their commitments to what they were willing to pay. He literally had people say, we pay this other very large credit card company, 6% or something like that. We will pay you 8% if you solve this problem for us. We'll actually pay you more. And he had that written down and he showed that. So that is de-risking the investment. That's what you want to show. So if you're in deep tech, something along those lines, you can show people who are interested, waiting lists, maybe crowdfunding, pre-crowdfunding, letters of intent, the number of people that you've spoken to, the people who have signed off on it. And if you show that, it's going to be different for every industry, but you have to show that we've done everything we can to prove out founder market fit so that we can get to the point where eventually we'll get product market fit.
Market size slide. TAM, SAM. So I see so many random numbers here. How should founders calculate these?
Right. And so I tell founders, your TAM, SAM, SOM is dependent upon your startup. And it's kind of interesting because not all every investor wants to see TAM, SAM, SOM because it's been done to death. Like it's been done wrong so many times. They're kind of callous to it. I like to see TAM, SAM, SOM, or I will actually send a founder back to do TAM, SAM, SOM because that's my investment thesis is if a founder can properly do TAM, SAM, SOM and stand up the math and it makes logical sense to me, then the numbers being wrong are not necessarily as important as the thought process in there. So show me the TAM, SAM, SOM. That's a little secret there. But at the same time, you have to understand there are 3 ways to do TAM, SAM, SOM or to size your market. And that's top-down analysis, and then bottom-up analysis, and then value theory analysis. Some startups can give me a top-down and it makes sense because they are addressing a whole encompassing problem and they're telling me that this market has flush with cash and this has happened in the marketplace. But a lot of times people will say, well, my app, let's just say, is for people who fly fish in rivers, right? Finding the best fly fishing spot or something along those lines. And they tell me the entire fishing industry around the world is $1 trillion. That's a top-down analysis. That's not your market. That's the entire thing. That's boats, that's selling fish, that's bait, that's everything. That's not your market. So now you have to go bottom up. And it's very simple. If every single person who needs my solution, who could use my solution, used it and paid me what I'm going to charge, this is how much money I'll make. That's your TAM. Very straightforward. And then SAM is a segment, and then SOM is what realistically. Now, a lot of founders, they challenge me and they say, but Ed, I'm doing something new and I don't know. And I had this one company we were raising money for, and they had this massive climate change protection, huge technology, like very, very deep scientific tech, proven. The category didn't exist, right? And so how are we going to prove that? How are we going to prove the market? Their assumptions weren't battle tested, their pricing. So I said, let's do this. Let's look at the amount of damage that you mitigate and what they would pay. And I'd say, let's charge 10% of that. And that's value theory, right? Let's say all the number of users, we say we're going to come in, we're 10x solution, we're going to charge you 10% what you're normally spending. Here's what we're going to be making. Well, then that's one way of doing value theory. There's many other ways. And I actually appreciate it if a founder can clearly explain to me, based on what the value of this will be into the market, we believe we will make this amount of money. That's acceptable as well. That may not necessarily be top down or bottom up, but if it logically makes sense to me and you know how many users and you can explain that, then that's a good market size.
What makes you trust these numbers?
I don't trust the numbers. It's just what it comes down to. I don't trust the numbers. And now some investors need to trust the numbers, but I've been around long enough. And here's what happens is I will then, if we're going to go into the socialization stage or go into due diligence, I will ask the founder to send me their data in terms of what they think they're going to pay, and I'll work my own numbers. So I'll do my own calculations. Sometimes the founder is wrong, but the market still looks really good. Sometimes the founder even misses it, or I will start to add in other markets that I see that maybe the founder doesn't see. If, let's say, the amount of money, what they're going to charge is battle tested. They tell me 1,000 users have already been paying this. Well, then it's easy for me to start doing the math. But sometimes it'll be absolutely amazing and I'm excited, but the market size, I'm like, there's just something not right about it. I will go do my own numbers and I'll present that to the investment committee or, we'll talk about it with the partners. So I never trust the numbers because every founder is wrong. On top of which, let's just look at this here. A founder probably pivots in the early stages. A founder probably says, I was wrong. This thesis did not pan out. My hypothesis is not right. So we're going to make some adjustments, which will change that. I just want to know the founder can do the market, understands how to segment the market, identify the market, has battle tested the market. That to me goes a long way. Think that investors that need to see the numbers are right and accurate right from the get-go, I don't think they're sophisticated startup investors. I think they're probably doing investments in real estate. Maybe they are angel investors, but we never trust the numbers. I don't trust the solution's going to work. I don't trust anything. I just want to know about the founder. Are you resourceful enough? Are you relentless enough? Are you passionate and obsessed enough to get to a pitch deck that makes sense and give me a container to work with so that later on we can plug in different numbers? If you can do that, then I'm okay.
If the product is a pioneer product, such as the innovative solution, 0 billion market, how to show these kinds of markets, such as Dropbox in the early days, Airbnb in the early days, Uber in the early days?
Yeah. Well, how you do that is you explain how many people have that pain, right? Because people are doing it the old fashioned way, somehow, some way. So if it's Uber, taxis, right? And then you can extrapolate. And this is a very important word, extrapolation. A lot of founders come back to me and they say, Ed, I can't find those numbers anywhere. I can't do that because they just don't exist. I've Googled it. I've asked ChatGPT. It doesn't work. And now you've told me that you are not a sophisticated enough founder to go and extrapolate. And this way, if you can go out and extrapolate and say, here are the number of people who have this pain, or you can predict, I looked at a very interesting pitch. It was a very unique and novel way. And this founder was explaining that right now to stream video, you need a program. You need to embed video on YouTube and anything like that. And nothing is native to the hypertext, protocol that you see. Everything, all web pages are built on HTML, things like that. And he said, we're going to make it so that you can now stream video right off your web page. You don't need a plugin. Well, that's 0 to 1 in terms of 0 to 1 monopoly solution. If you can, get that done and you get that adopted. So immediately I start extrapolating in my mind, and I know investors have done this, how many people go to the internet, how many web pages there are, things like that. And now that's a massive market. So just explain how big the pain is, how many users have that pain, and let the imagination of the investors go wild. You're good.
Product screenshot and demos, when to include them, how to show them, and do you like to have live demos versus product already recordings?
Yes. All right. It depends on the stage. If you have a product and it's live and you can actually show screenshots of the interface, I definitely want to see screenshots briefly. I do not need 5 slides of every single interface angle, every panel, every button. I don't need that. Just give me proof that you have developed something. When they do hostage negotiations, they call it proof of life, right? I just need some proof of life. I need a voice, I need a picture, something like that. So give me proof of life of your MVP. If it actually exists, put it in there, and that's fine. I will eventually ask for a live demo, or if you have a video demo handy, then maybe I'll watch it if the time is great. Like, I need it. Or if the video demo is good. Now, just like pitch decks, I've turned off video demos in the first 5-10 seconds, right? I'll say, I want a live demo. But this happened yesterday. I had a founder demo his generative AI tool. And if he would have sent me a video, I would have said, no, not interested. But he was so early stage, he gave me a live demo and he told me to log in. And I moved my mouse around and said, now click this, click that. Truth be told, the interface and the experience was terrible. But he is early stage. And, he was explaining to me and he was sharing the story and he was explaining to me the intentions. But when I clicked the button, it actually did what he promised would happen. And so if it was a recorded demo, probably would have passed. So it really depends on what stage you are and what you're looking at. And I like options. So if someone has got a really great demo and they show something, like let's say it's deep tech, and they show like a 3D animation and it is 10 seconds of the, jaws moving and, inside the human body and things like that. Okay. I'm okay with that. Especially if you tell me it's like 10 seconds just to see how it works. I'm totally okay with that. So you have to understand, deliver in a way that's enticing. So this is what I tell founders. Don't think from a founder perspective, think from an investor perspective. What's going to make them want to see the next thing and not get them bored or disengage? you as the founder, you may think, oh, it's so cool and I need to show this. No, no, no. At what stage is the investor looking at it and what's going to help them next? Think from that perspective, and then you can continue on. And maybe later on, I'll watch a 30-minute. If I'm in due diligence, I'll watch anything. I'll watch everything. Like you put a 30-minute video in your data room, I will watch it because I have to watch it. If I don't watch it and I make a decision and it's a wrong decision, that's on me. And so I will go through everything. But by then, I just need an answer. No, I want to write the check, or I want to say, all right, let's send this on. I'm looking for a reason. No. And so that you got to use your material like demos at the appropriate moment and guide the investor along the journey.
I think there's a fast lane and a slow lane. So you take 99 startups from the fast lane with red flags very quickly. And then when you decide some of the startups, then you analyze it deeply in a slow lane.
Yeah.
Maybe days, maybe weeks.
Let's demonstrate this. So you write checks. I've written checks. I'm writing smaller checks. And I talk to investors that write checks. So for you, let's demonstrate this. So for you, when are demos important and when are videos important? When do you watch it? What have you experienced?
If I don't understand the product, I need it because sometimes the pitch deck doesn't tell the product properly. I ask the question in the meeting or I wanted to see the product working. But it is in the meeting. I mean, it's not in the screening process. If it passed through the screening, which means I should spend another hour with the founders online. And, I will dedicate my half an hour to the founders. I can ask them about the product in details, how the customers are using, and if I'm not aware of the industry or not an expert on the sector that they are working, I need something on video or real time working. So that's the moment that I ask the question about recordings or live demos. That's what I need. Of course, due diligence process, I can watch in details. I wanted to see in details how it process the problem and the solution.
Yes, perfect. And you and I were very similar. Other investors might not be, but I'll share where it deviates. You've developed that process because you need to be efficient with your time and you've created a system. It's like, I'm not going to watch a video now. I'll watch a demo or request a live demo during a 30-minute meeting, and then I'll watch more videos during due diligence. There are times, depending on the founder, and I've done this, where I'll go and I won't request a meeting. I will go watch their stuff secretly, and I will just go search for everything they have because I'll say, I'm not exactly sure. There's something compelling. Let me do some research. And there was one founder, very, very early stage, very green, and she was explaining to me what she was trying to do. And I said, I just don't see it happening, but there's something compelling. And we did some research on her and we found some videos. And I went back to her and I said, I think that this is not the way that you need to go, but you are a founder that's got something very interesting. You didn't tell me this, this, and this. And I'm interested in that founder. And so I actually went and pursued her after to take the next steps. Now, it didn't work out in the long term, but that's what we do at the early stages. I'm looking for something. So if you have videos sitting on the internet, just know that eventually someone's going to, Google you or look through all your posts on LinkedIn. But sometimes I'll do that up front. But that's just because that was that particular founder in that industry. It was media. So I said, all right, this is worth a look beyond what I'm seeing right now. Every investor is going to be different. Some investors say, you know what, I'm going to just pass this screen deck along and tell my assistant to book me a meeting, and my associates are going to go to this meeting type thing. Everybody's different. And that's one of the things that all founders should ask when talking to an investor or have an initial meeting is, how does it work here? Like, how do you make deals here? What do you expect? So many founders, they get a meeting and they say, oh, investors are going to talk to me, and they freak out and they tell me, what should I do? And can we have a meeting and can we practice? And I say, first things first, contact them and ask them, what do you expect? What do you want to do? How's this going to work? And if they say, I want to see a demo, I don't want to see the pitch deck, then you don't have to worry about your pitch deck. You just get ready for a demo, have your pitch deck ready, be prepared for every situation. And that's something that will help a founder prepare better to understand the process of the investor. That's important.
How about the business model, revenue model, and also go-to-market strategy? How to show them in the presentation?
Again, back to the principle, show it in a way that de-risks the investment if you can. So if you got a go-to-market strategy and it's already working, then show them that you've done this and that, and show them the strategy, the business model, show them how you've got to it, what customers care about. If you just say, we're just going to charge a monthly subscription, and you don't tell me how much you're going to charge or what tiers, you haven't done that research, then you're not de-risking the investment because you're founder with a lot of assumptions and you could have easily went out and tested them before you're talking to me. So if you don't give me evidence and you're not leading me along, because, by that time, if I'm to your business model and I'm to the go-to-market strategy, all those slides, then you already got me kind of hooked. You're just reeling me in, right? I'm optimistic. So if you let me down and it's like, oh, you didn't actually put the work in. So generally speaking, the more succinct and concise you can get without overloading the investor with details, and just say very straight out, like, let's just say, business model slide, we're charging a monthly freemium model with a monthly subscription plus a 2% transaction fee, everything. And then you just got a little menu of what you're charging, then I'm okay. And the reason it's so important is because business models are leaving. Like, let's just look at the shift between monthly SaaS fees now to how many people are willing to pay for a lifetime. Like, I never thought I'd do this before, but I'm these days willing to pay for lifetime access because I know where monthly SaaS fees go. So if you get me in on the early bird and you explain the unit economics on that, then you show that to investors, say everyone's charging monthly, but we're charging a one-time access. Like video games, that's another industry. It was always like, here's the free video game, and here are the microtransactions. We're going to charge $3 per transaction, right there. And that business model went crazy. But I know for a fact, because I'm in the video game industry, that users have rejected that model in many ways. So now, if you come to me and say, we're just going to charge microtransaction fees, and you haven't actually put some thought into it, then, okay, I'm going to say, well, everybody else does that. Then that's a mark against you. But if you came to me and said, everyone else is charging microtransaction fees, and maybe this goes in your competition slide, we're charging an upfront, we're charging $70 right up front, and we've proven that people would do that versus microtransactions, then now I'm interested in you give me your business model in a way that gives me unique insight, maybe contrarian, creates novelty, and now I'm interested in you as a founder.
Competition slide. You always say, don't claim no competition. What is a good way to show competition? Matrix versus quadrant, your preference?
Yes, it depends. I have successfully raised money with a benefits matrix, raised money with a quadrant, magic quadrant, and then I've had pitch decks where I put in both because it needed it. So it really depends. The most important thing is what goes on your XY axis in your quadrant and what goes on that left-hand side or your benefits. It has to be compelling, that makes me different because the customers want it. You can't just give me a feature. You have to explain to me why that feature matters and whether your competition has it or not. And a lot of times people say, we have no competition, we're the first in the market. Yeah, you have lots of competition. That's the alternative solutions and the people trying to build the product, everything like that. So you have to present it in a way that's thoughtful and meaningful that makes the investor say, you do stand apart from your competition. So, and this is where a benefits matrix might not work because you have all these X's and you got all these check marks, and usually your column is all the check marks, right? That's how you do it. And I understand why founders do that, and I just want to see it. But sometimes you've got great competition and you want to say, these are really great competition. They will compete against us. They'll crush us, but we're so different. So they use video, we use audio to solve the same problem. Well, put that on your magic quadrant. These are all the video providers, and these are all the audio providers, and here's us over here, and there's nobody doing it. So that's our contrarian bet. So we're contrarian on the magic quadrant. But if you put that in a benefits matrix, then it might look like video's better and you're not doing video, right? And you say we're doing audio. And so that's where you have to be wise and careful and thoughtful about what technique you use on your competition slide.
Team slide. I see lots of team slides that they put all the team from interns to advisors to their relatives to, I mean, in a one slide. What should be on the this slide? And when founders put every advisor they have ever met.
Yes, founders, most important, those who are going to be full-time and who have more than 10% equity on the cap table. To me, that's how I like to see it. So if you've got two founders and they're going to be full-time, put those two founders right there up front. Now, if you have built a team and you have a founding team, then put them really small. Don't give me any information. Just say, we have a VP of sales. We have a, so-and-so, and here's our name. And that's okay. So let's say you've got two big bubbles right in the top of the slide. And at the bottom, you've got 6 little tiny bubbles. And they're full-time employees. Great. Do that. Now, I've seen founders, they try and trick the investor and say, these people are all full-time. And I look at their bios and I go, this person is not full-time. And so immediately I start to question. So you are now not building the trust that I need by being upfront with the information. And if I have to go in and do diligence and I have to poke holes in it, then you're putting me in a situation where I'm the bad person. Like, I'm basically trying to expose you, and that's not a dynamic that you want. So just put the main team, those are going to be upfront, and those who've got more than 10% and they're operational, like they're going to be working inside the company. Put the rest of your team just lightly, really small, to say that you've already built a team. And then if you've got advisors that are important, that will move the needle, so to speak, then put them on a different slide. Or if it all fits, just be very clear. This is an advisor. So this is full-time CEO, full-time COO, full-time CTO, and then this is advisor. That's fine.
What should the team disclose in the team slide as a bullet points? Years of experience or companies that they worked in? What do you expect?
Yes. So I want to know, have you worked on the problem before? What domain expertise lends itself to have solving the problem? And do you have anything in your bio that makes me go, wow, you are an amazing founder? For example, I was raising money, we ended up raising a pre-seed round. It was about $200,000. And one of my co-founders who I brought on was a 2-time Olympic athlete. Had nothing to do with the startup, but I put it right up front at the top of the bio, the team slide, 2-time Olympic athlete, because immediately that shows me that you are a founder that has got the qualities of a great founder. So those are the 3 things. Now, if you've worked at an obscure company, let's say someone says, I worked at four startups, and those startups don't really mean anything, and you put the logos of those startups and I've never recognized them before, then it's not worth it. It's not worth the space. But if you just say, I'm a 4-time founder type thing, well, then at least I know that you've got founder experience. So that makes sense to me, right? So if you've got an obscure company that you worked with, but you worked in the industry, then just say, I have 20 years working in the industry at this level, and be detailed about it. Just don't say, I work in this industry, because I don't know if you got that job last month or, you volunteer or something along those lines. So be more distinct, but make sure you're detailed enough that I get the picture. But if you start to throw everything at me and I don't recognize those logos, or the social proof is redundant and extraneous, then that's a no-no. Now you're wasting space.
Founders should understand that there is no correlation between the quantity of the team size and raising money. If there are 2 co-founders and having a presentation, they can also raise pre-seed funding, which I did already several times.
Yeah, it's even worse. Let's push it. If you are at an early stage, and I had some founders pitch me the other day, and you know who they brought to the meeting? And this is very important on who, and they should really ask. They ended up bringing a partner to the meeting who had technology, who owned the technology as a completely separate company. And I brought it up to them. I said, this is not a good look. If you're expecting investors to take you seriously, why are you bringing a partner and saying we're using the technology when that partner could easily say, I'm done with this deal, I'm going to go. And I pointed that out. And they were bringing on people who just had no relevance, real relevance, and thinking that the more people they put in front of me, the better it was going to be. And I was like, this is not, you're now having the opposite effect of what you intended, right? And so if you look, like if you just look at the startups that have been successful, the math is there. Solo founders, very difficult, not always successful. Now, the ones that get super successful, they get really successful. Like, Jeff Bezos started off by himself, coding away. But if you just even look at Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, like 2 co-founders, usually ideal, right? 3 co-founders, okay, it's a pass. But anything past 3 co-founders, your chances of success exponentially dive. And so if you come to me and you present to me 6 co-founders, 6 people on your cap table, you're going to have the opposite effect. You're not telling me you're impressive. You're telling me that you don't know how to lead a company. You don't understand how to build a team. And like I said, you're going to have the opposite effect. So founders really need to think about that.
And there are examples of financial intermediaries or companies join the meetings or send the emails to raising funding.
Yeah, and it's hilarious. And I've got some brokers who want, who use our services, and I just shake my head. Thankfully, nobody's ever been on a meeting. No one's, but I've heard that happen. People have asked me to come as their advisor on a VC meeting, and I've said, absolutely not, no way. Unless they ask. If the VC asks, I want to talk to Ed, I say, have them give me a phone call and we'll talk to them directly for a reference check. But no way would I ever bring anybody or send anybody other than the founders to that initial meeting.
How about the financial slides? What do you expect? Everybody shows the hockey stick.
Yeah.
Your take on that? What projections matter at the pre-seed and seed stage?
They matter later. I don't put financial projections. Now, I know a lot of people will argue with me on this, and they'll say, put like just one summary slide. I don't, because I completely ignore it. That's one slide that you can, every single one of these financial projection slides goes up and to the right, right? Like you can do it. How do you know? You're going to be wrong. I'm going to be wrong. Nobody knows, especially if we're doing something innovative and disruptive. We don't know. Later on, I'm going to want to see a financial model that you can plug in different numbers. I'm going to say, what if LinkedIn starts charging you twice your advertising budget, et cetera, right? I like to bake in my financial assumptions, especially if they're battle tested, through the rest of the pitch deck. I like to say, this is what I'm spending on my customer acquisition. These are my numbers, and this is lifetime value, et cetera. So I explain that. It just shows that I have put in the homework. And if you come to due diligence stage with me, I will show you. I had a co-founder who was a public accountant, like a certified public accountant. And her financial models were literally 40 slides, sheets, huge. Like she accounted for everything. And we spent all this time doing all this. And she said, what do you think insurance is going to cost? What do you think taxes are going to be, et cetera. And she took it down to the dime. And I can appreciate that. I would never show any of that to any company or investor right in the beginning. But later on, when we're doing due diligence, investors were like, wow, you actually have an accountant as, your partner. So you're checking all those things and we're making sure. That gave them a lot of confidence. So they were bought in because of the financial model later, right? What I like to say is if you have numbers, so let's say you're raising seed and you've been in business for 3 years, show those numbers on the growth graph and then show where you might, like based on this, we can see our projection going and give me 1 year of what you expect to make in the next year. One number, that's fine. But if it's not based on real data, then I'm just going to say, you know what? I don't need to see it. It doesn't hurt. I don't look at a financial slide and go, I'm done. It doesn't hurt because by that point in time, it's usually like one of the last slides in the deck, but I never believe it. I never even pay attention to it unless it's based on real data.
the us slide. I see founders afraid of putting numbers. Or do you expect them to put the valuation, show it or not, and how to use the funds or timeline expectations?
Yes, always put how much you are raising. And here's the thing. This is what I do for founders. I don't say pre-seed seed. So some say we're raising a $2 million seed or $500,000 pre-seed. Those levels are slowly going away because there's so much gray. Like people are changing. Some people consider $500,000 a seed round, and some people consider $10 million a pre-seed round if you're an AI or something along those lines, right? And so if you've shown the progress, and that's the reason you get to the traction slide. What's the state of our product? How many users? Have we made any money? I'm going to know whether you're in pre-seed or seed or not. So you don't have to tell me. But what I want to see, this is the formula. I want to see how much you're raising to reach what milestone in what period of time. When do you think? Okay. I'm raising X dollars for Y milestone in Z time frame. That to me is just a great way to start your ask slide. Then I expect a use of funds. And even then, I don't believe the founder if they say use of funds, but I can get an idea of what you're thinking. And if you've got 75% in salaries, then I'm going to be going, okay, there's something wrong here, right? I know some investors who will immediately start number crunching the use of funds slide because that's important for them. So make sure that you're not fudging your numbers and you put some thought into it. And the timeline, I don't care about your roadmap. I really don't care unless it's important. Like there's regulatory, what's happening is you got a clear phase of this is how it's going to work and it makes sense. Don't tell me, here's my roadmap. We're going to raise money now. Then we're going to do A round, B round, and then we're going to go public in 5 years. I don't need to see that. That to me shows you're unsophisticated and probably a foolish founder that you're going to be saying those things. So that's super important. As far as sharing how much, big mistake founders make, they say for 18 months runway. That is a huge no-no because what that's telling me is that you're raising money just to raise to the next round. And that may not happen. And to me, that does not show that you are looking at every single dollar, maximizing it. And I prefer investors who play the game of I'm going to be in pre-seed and then seed, and then we're going to sell them up to the A round and then raise another round and get our management fees, everything like that. That's where this all comes from, okay? Raise 18 months so you can get to the A round. And you have to understand that's the way they make money is selling up. But me, I don't make money that way. I don't make money and I don't have that horizon. I don't want to sell you up to the A round. If you go to the A round, that's great. But you may be a founder that I'm looking for, a 50% return, year over year or something along that, like in that area, because you're not going to be unicorn and I'm still interested. If you tell me 18 months runway, then I'm going to be like, well, then what are you going to do? Just light my money on fire up to that point in time. So if you show me a meaningful milestone, if you say, I'm raising this money to start generating revenue in the next 6 months, then I can do the math in my head. And I can say, by that point in time, we'll do a follow-on round, or I think you'll be ready to raise more money, things like that. And we're not diluted. I can protect my investment. That to me is the type of conversation you want to have by the ask slide instead of putting in erroneous numbers that aren't going to make any difference.
Are there any slides after the ask slide, such as backup slides or closing slides? What do you expect from especially founders? Sometimes they forgot their contact numbers.
Yeah,
So then
exactly.
emails.
Yeah, here's the new thing is I've started arguing to put contact information on the cover slide and on the last slide because I find that some people gloss through it really quickly. And then if I can't find the email or let's save the PDF, I don't want to have to open the PDF and go all the way to the end. So I want to make it easier right on the cover slide. Contact slide is good. Sometimes I've seen founders really impress me with a vision slide or something personal about them or an invitation, like a call to action. Sometimes that impresses me. Sometimes it falls really flat. So you have to do it really well. The safest way, right after the ask slide, contact slide. Say thank you. Look forward to, having conversation with you. But if you can add one extra thing, sometimes they'll see contact and then there's an appendix with more information because it's that type, or they've attached maybe a white paper to it or different things, or, more testimonials, a case study, and they clearly mark it. This is appendix of case study, and I'm interested. Sometimes I do appreciate that, and I'll go through it. And this is where some investors appreciate a 30-page slide deck. Some say just send them all your slides if it's good. Like some advisors say, send all the slides. And I would concur that if it's good, if you're the front of your pitch deck is problem, solution, market size, everything, that's the teaser. And now the rest of your deck is so compelling that I can go into socialization and I'm super interested and I will read another 20 slides. Sure, include it if it's good, if it makes sense. But if you're not ready for that, don't do it. Just get them into a upfront meeting. But that's usually if someone has already raised a seed or has a major inflection point and, like time is of the essence and we're creating FOMO, then yeah, give me all those slides. But beyond that, just end it simply and just say, here's my contact information, book me for a meeting.
Screening deck should be 10 to 15 slides. How many slides do you expect?
I expect 10 to 12 slides is my ideal for most founders. I have created amazing screener decks with 6 slides. That's if I've got traction, it's just very straightforward. 6 slides and investors love it. I know founders and I've created 6 slides of pitch deck for them. Some pitch decks, like right now I'm raising capital and I don't want to break any non-disclosure, but this company is they raised a very small pre-seed round. They've already made $24 million. They made $2 million in the first 6 months. They're already at like $24 million revenue generated. And I'm just absolutely blown away by that, right? And so that's where that pitch deck, because I put that in there, that pitch deck is about 16 slides, 16, 17 slides. It's warranted because it's that good. And in the email, I'm going to literally tell them, we've already made $24 million in the first 12 months. They're going to open that pitch deck and they're going to want to see more slides, right? So I've got those steps in there in terms of just clearly explaining the science and the technology of contrarian position. But most founders at the early stage pre-seed, 12 slides, and that's including your cover and your back. So 10 slides of content, cover slide 11, your back cover with contact slide 12. I think that's enough.
This has been gold. You always say no fluff. Yep. And that's exactly what we got today. Really appreciate you sharing the real deal with all the founders. Thank you very much.
You bet. Happy to come here. I look forward to having more conversations.
Me too.